I thank the member and recognize the member for Powell River Sunshine Coast.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to add my thank you to my colleagues who are so enthusiastically supporting my opportunity to speak to this motion, which it touches close to home, being a former social worker and working with many community social service providers throughout my career with the ministry and with delegated child welfare agencies. And I just like to say that when we recognize social workers, we recognize their work, and we are not always sure what exactly they do. But this is an opportunity to recognize them for the sacrifices they make in the course of their duty, as well as the difficulty, to acknowledge the difficulty that their work is, the difficult nature of their work. And when you talk about social workers and then talk about community social services, you recognize we're talking about two wings on the same plane, and when one isn't adequately functioning, the other is going to suffer. And when you have social workers who wake up in the morning and go to work, they don't know what's going to be in front of them for the day. They might get 3 or 4 phone calls from families that are in crisis. They'll have to balance their court appearances. They're going to have to work with families that are already on their caseload and perhaps fill in for a missing social worker in the office next door. The burden that this places on not just the social worker but on their families is significant, especially when you consider the fact that the tools available for them to do their work are being diminished year by year. There was a time when social workers could go into a home and assess the situation, provide referrals to well-supported community organizations, whether it be for children who witness violence, or whether it be for a program to support parents with anger management issues, or assistance with alcohol and drug issues. Now when a social worker goes into a home, they hope and pray that either the problem isn't significant enough to open a file because they haven't got time to do it, or that there's some agency in the community that still has a place on their in their file for yet another family to work with. And for the most part, Madam Speaker, those social workers go into homes and assess situations and have nothing to offer. They are unable to provide any information or referral to any service that might be of benefit to that family. So that family is left to continue living in their crisis situation. They might manage it for a few days, and it might not be managed appropriately, at which point the social worker has to come back and make more drastic actions. When you take away the opportunity for social workers to provide good preventative programs, what you're really doing is you're burdening the back end of the social services system and forcing social workers to do what they hate to do, and that is to remove children from their guardians. And when you take away the options for a social worker, it leads to crises. And unfortunately, when policy dictates that social workers have very few tools available to them without coming up using their biggest tool, which is removal, you've got a system in crisis. Many people have described the recent changes to the ministry as penny wise, pound foolish. I think that the cuts that we're seeing to the Ministry for Children and Families, not just in program dollars, but in actually frontline supports, those cuts signify to me that it's short-term pain for long-term pain. And when you have short-term pain for long-term pain, you've got children in this province who are going to suffer. If I might remind this House, it was Justice Hughes who told this ministry that they mustn't engage in dramatic change and transformation while they're experiencing budget restrictions, because that was the circumstance that led to the death of a child. And that was pointed out very clearly to this government. And yet we see once again that you see massive change in organizational structure, regionalization, transformation, good practice action guide, all these airy-fairy words and all these changes being imposed on a ministry while they're experiencing budget cuts. Well, this ministry was warned by Gove, this ministry was warned by Hughes. and yet we stand in this House having to defend social workers against not the difficult work that they have to do because of the nature of the work, but because of the imposition of restrictions by a government that's supposed to be there to support them. So when I say I stand with the opposition in supporting social workers and community social service agencies, I do so proudly, and I understand the challenges that they face, and we'll be doing our best to support them in practice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.